Hoki mai ki tēnei pāho. Did you catch that? Hoki mai ki tēnei pāho. If you've been listening since the start of the season, you'll understand most of this one. Hoki means to return. So hoki mai ki tēnei pāho. Welcome back to the podcast. Join Vini and I, Ari, as we navigate love and life as partners and our wawata, our dreams for language within the home. In this episode, we are going to dive into language planning. Don't be put off by the buzzwords that might sound a little bit like we're talking textbooks today. They're there so you can Google them or look them up later. Just kick back and listen to the kōrero. In today's epi, I asked Vini about how to actually revive a language, the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts. Today the reo we're going to focus on is he aha te wawata and he aha te mate. What's the dream? What's the matter or problem? You've actually heard these before in episode 4. We just want to cover these off one more time so you get to hear it in more context. So alright whānau, make a kai, go wharepucks, whatever else you need to do to get comfy, and tune in. Let's get into it.
You're in the driver's seat today. This feels weird.
Let's see how we go.
Okay, what are we talking about?
Failing. Planning to fail. Oh, that was cute. We didn't even plan that.
We didn't. So are we talking about language planning? So this one might be a little bit more geeky academic in some respects, but maybe less about us as a couple and more about the things that I've observed in my time as a language planner helping families. And maybe some of those things that I employ as a couple and that you employ, or that we employ as a couple, and how that relates to language planning, concepts, stuff like that. I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you'll know.
I'll know.
You'll know because this is your jam.
Nerd.
What are the fundamentals of language planning?
Great question, Ari.
Thank you.
One of the things that is true about communication is that we don't often think about it. It's quite subconscious and really spontaneous. So if you already have some ingrained patterns of communication in your home, when it comes to wanting to speak another language at home, that means changing all that. And that's not spontaneous, and that's not very subconscious. That requires like lots of conscious thinking. And so language planning is basically designed to respond to that. It's knowing that you can't just wake up in the morning and go, this house is Māori speaking. It actually takes so much back-end work, and it's back-end work we don't always think about. So language planning concepts are all designed to respond to that. There are heaps of them, and there are lots of different theories out there around language planning. There's lots of different ways to think about it. There's lots of different models, and the one that we use in New Zealand and in Aotearoa is its own one. Like, it's not the one that everybody uses around the world. But they involve five key things. They involve thinking about learning. How are you going to learn the language? Using. How are you going to take those learnings and turn them into opportunities within your home and your whānau to actually use what you've learned? What are you going to have to concoct around that, to give those opportunities? What are the kinds of words that you might need and how you're going to find them? So that's usually, we call it corpus, but it's mostly like, is it learning karakia? Is it learning vocab? Is it learning sentence structure? Is it informal? Is it formal? A lot of people will put on a waiata class, for example. Go to a waiata class or put on one. Go to a karakia class and then wonder why they can't speak Māori at home. That's because the home's not set up for that karakia or that waiata or whatever. There's no spontaneous language in those things. They're all rote learned. But home is hardly ever rote learned. Home is almost always spontaneous stuff. So it's matching all that stuff up, and sometimes people don't. So it's just designed to get people thinking about that. Status, what makes everyone involved feel good about the language so that they assign it value. We do lots in the Māori speaking world to take value away from Māori, and we don't really realise we're doing that. So what's going to make people feel good? Is it overt correction and discipline? I don't think so, but a lot of our whānau don't see that connection, that overt discipline, or overcorrection or discipline or whatever, you know, hurry up and speak Māori, isn't assigning value to that language, it's assigning it negativity, which is taking value away. So that's the fourth one. And then the last one is critical awareness. How are you going to manage other languages in that space so that they don't compete? Because language competition is something we don't want. It's not something we need. And if we're constantly matching our Māori up against our English use, we're never going to get there with our plan. So how can we work to increase our use of Māori and not get down about the presence of other languages because we've already thought about them and what role they might play. So those are the 5 things that we try and get people to think about in the whānau, which I think we think about a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. You've talked about correction and the language planner here's the status.
Yeah, things that work and don't work, because if you've got a whole whānau that you want to have be involved in this plan, it's not necessarily wanting their buy-in. You want them to just be involved, but on their own terms. Like everybody brings their own hopes and dreams to that plan, and you kind of, I would assume you try and cater to everybody rather than be like, this is the one way and you all have to do it. Yeah,
that's so true. And I think like there'll be lots of people listening who will be like, oh my gosh, I've been called out by Vini. But sorry. But there's a lot of people who don't do that when they want to, they're so passionate about reviving language in their home or changing the language of their home that they kind of forget that other people have needs and wants when it comes to communication, and everybody matters. So it's got to take everyone along for the journey, even if they're outright negative about it. You know, I don't want that language in my home. I guess this conversation isn't for me because I don't speak that. You know, there's really common answers that lots of our family members will give when we try to do language change in the home, and it's usually because they haven't been taken along for the journey. You know, we've overstepped and we've gone in guns blazing and gone, this house is forever more Māori speaking, and people going, what? So I can't communicate? Okay. I guess it's not for me.
I wasn't included in this. You've made the decision for me.
And in a home, that's real hard to do because it should be everybody's safe place.
I think especially with children as well. Like, I think it's one thing to have adults agreeing, but to have tamariki, regardless of their age, might be hard. Especially our boy is 10 and hasn't grown up with much Māori. I can't imagine me going to him tomorrow, okay, we're only speaking te reo. Because he'd be like, nah.
It's so true. But the way that, like, in this whare anyway, and I felt like I really wanted him to be part of our journey, and we'd talked about it, language stuff by then. And so, we had said to ourselves, how te wawata, what's our dream for language? What's our wawata? And we'd sat down and talked about that, having our boy with whakapapa Māori who hadn't been exposed to a lot of te reo, but knowing that he was 9 at the time or 8, how can you get him involved in feeling good? And that's the status thing. it's not what makes me feel good about language, it's not what makes you feel good about language, but he liked playing games in the car on the way to school. I was like, cool, car game. So that's when we did yellow car. You know, that's how yellow car started. And you got 1 point for saying yellow car every time you found a yellow car. But you got 2 points for saying whakaahua, you know, and been trying really hard to get 4 points for tokelau as well, so we can really like up that, and that status, because the person who says whakaaomarama the most wins the game, you know. So those status things are just, they tow other people along in ways that you identify those people's needs, you know. He needs to play games in the car, sweet, let's do that. And let's not stop him from doing it in English. You know, we're not going to overcorrect that, or we're not going to discipline that by saying if it's not Māori, we're not playing that game.
Yeah.
But we say English is 1 point, whakaaomarama is 2. And now he does haka in the shower. And the neighbours are probably like, man, those people are hearty.
Yeah,
Hearty. Nah, he's hearty.
Fair matatini going on in that whare.
Yeah.
So we've told the whānau at home, well, you've filled them in on the fundamentals of language planning. But what about those that might be sitting there going, but what is it?
Yeah, true. It's really the art of laying down the dream that you want for your family, and then pairing it back to lots of sustainable goals, like real sustainable goals. So the main dream would be, I want to be a Māori speaking household. I think that's probably the overall goal for heaps of us. But that then tends to become the immediate goal. You know, this house is Māori speaking now. Okay, I don't know the word for food processor, and I don't know the word for candlelight holder or candle holder. You know, like those things. And then when you're at home, you've got your everyday life. You've got work, and you've got school, and you've got emotions, and you've got tantrums, and you've got immediate scenarios and that you need to deal with. You've got tiredness, you've got all of these things. You've got visitors who don't necessarily speak Māori. There's all these things happening all the time, and that's too much for a goal, you know, to be immediate. But we don't often think about that. So language planning is designed to make you pare it back into a really sustainable, realistic goal, set a realistic time frame around that, and understand that if you do this little bit over here and succeed at it, half of that language then transfers into every other domain that you live in while you're working on your next goal. So if your language plan is changes from we're Māori speaking immediately, which is not sustainable, no one is going to get there, to in 6 months we're going to have our first Māori speaking dinner. Okay, cool. Dinner is like, that's a real specific language context now. We just have to think about karakia for kai maybe. We have to think about our foods that we're going to eat. We're going to plan the menu. We're going to learn those words, and then we're going to put all that together, and that's all we have to do. We don't have to learn the words for everything else in the one hit. So it's kind of designed to make you do all that stuff. It's recognizing that we often overlook and overshoot our goals when it comes to language, because it's invisible. Like, we talk all the time, and none of it's visible. It all happens in our minds and in the air. So we tend to think things are realistic that aren't. It also recognises that there are some realities about language planning that some of us don't like to accept, but they are real. So it takes 1 generation to lose your language in the home, and it takes at least 4 minimum to get it back. If you can do it faster, that's amazing, but that's not common. Most of us are going to take 4 generations. You and I won't see a Māori speaking household for our families in our lifetimes. it would be our great-grandkids, if anyone, who actually become the first Māori-speaking household.
It's quite bad.
It is, yeah, it is.
1 generation versus 4.
It is. But there's hope in that, right? Because if we know that, because globally, right around the world, people who are doing this take that long, then we can lift the pressure off ourselves of having to be 100% monolingual Māori speaking tomorrow, which, by the way, is probably never going to happen. We're probably always going to be multilingual. So understanding that also takes the pressure off us when we think we've failed, but we haven't, because our house is multilingual and it's meant to be that way. That is the correct way for it to be. You know what I mean? There are Māori speaking households though that are monolingual. So that's also an okay goal. Like, you're allowed to have that as a goal as well. So yeah, it's recognizing that, and then it's putting in a system of checks and balances to make sure that you're setting really realistic goals, being strategic and chasing those goals in a really sustainable way, giving you the best chance of success and allowing you to figure out things that might fail and clock them in advance so you can correct them. Yeah, that's really what it is. If you decide to have a proper full-on language plan that aligns to all of the latest scholarly research, then kei te pai. But if you don't have that and don't want that, you're still language planning if you come in the house and go, this house is Māori speaking now. That's still a language plan.
That's the plan.
Yeah, it's not the one I would choose, but
Yeah.
because I'd turn around and go,
You have to have one though. Could having the language for you and your whānau still be possible without a proper plan? Like, I know that you just said walking into the whare saying we're all speaking te reo now is a plan, but having nothing else and then you just immediately launch into te reo, like it sounds very hard.
Yeah.
But could a whānau not have those discussions and have those goals and just succeed?
I think so. I don't think you have to have a documented, written out, full plan. If you, even if you decided one day to send your kids to a Māori medium school or a kohanga, or you yourself decided to go and learn te reo because you had a dream, you'd said to yourself, hea te wawata, what's my dream? Taking yourself off to university. That's a language plan. It's not as nuanced as I think it could be, but that's a plan. Like, I got a plan, this is what I want to do. So no, I don't necessarily think you have to have a thing that you call a language plan, but I think we all do lots of things that are language plans. We just don't,
In essence.
yeah, we just don't label them as such. So yeah, but I do see the whānau who have been really successful in their endeavours to change the language of their home. They have either done everything by the book on accident, or they have had a definitive language plan that is by the book. So I think the planning concepts do stack up, because a lot of people on their way to landing on the right choices make a lot of mistakes and figure it out, but that takes time. So by the time they miraculously do everything correct, they've made lots of mistakes, figured out things that don't work. But in essence, like, language planning is like any habit change. Like, I know lots of our listeners will be people who have followed fitness pages, parenting pages, habit change pages on social media, and actually, like, I reckon the principles are quite similar. You do stuff that makes everyone feel good. You do stuff that gives them the resources they need, the education that they need, the learning, and then you give them an opportunity to use what they know. You take stock of things that might go wrong. If you go to the gym, you start a fitness habit, you learn pretty quick you got to stretch. You know, you're taking stock of things that can go wrong.
For whānau at home that are listening and thinking like, yeah, I really want to start a language plan for my whare, who should be involved in that plan?
You're just asking like the treasured questions today. You're doing so great.
You're welcome, Dr. Vini.
Everyone has to be involved, and that's something that not everyone does.
Even the cat and the dog?
Even the cat and the dog. Yeah. Everyone has to be involved, so it has to come with, well, everyone who communicates, I think, has to be involved. So if you've got a really young newborn, you know, you can make choices for them. But if they're communicating, you've got to think about their communicative needs. So we have a tendency in our language world for one person in the family to just, they'll get really fired up over language and be like, I want us to be Māori speaking, this is happening. And then they'll embark on a series of things. And there are some common things that happen. Like, everyone speak Māori now. No one speak English. Don't do this, don't do that. And it becomes very authoritarian. But communication is never authoritarian, you know? So you have to take account of people's needs, and you have to take account of people's hesitancies. And we have a tendency too to shrug off hesitancy, you know? You'll be right, you know, don't worry about it. And those things don't often gel very well, So you really have to talk to everyone about it in their own way, in a way that makes sense. So if you're partners on a level playing field, it's got to come with a partner type communication that honestly you should be doing everything in, like, you know.
For sure.
You know, you might have a chat about opening a shared bank account, you might have a chat about buying a new waka, you might have a chat about a savings account, or a, you know, renovating your home, or I don't know.
It's just good communication 101.
And then for some reason when it comes to language, the other person will just run in and be like, this is how this house works now. And it doesn't gel if the two aren't connecting on that way. There's hesitancies, particularly around people's whakama. You know, there might be whakama to communicate in a new language, but your authoritarian dictator self has just yelled at them to do it. Doesn't always go down well. And then there's people's language trauma. There might be reasons that they are having the reaction that they're having, and unless you allow people room to move within your language plan, they're probably going to revolt. Teenagers often revolt because if they don't feel like it's cool, you know. So it's got to be cool when, you know, whatever you do, it's got to be cool. Little kids, it's got to be fun. You know, it's all those things that I think we think about this stuff for lots of other areas, you know. You don't get your 5-year-old kids party and take them off to read legal documents in the library because that's not fun, you know. So we make it fun, and then we reward in the right way too. So, you know, if it was our language plan for us too, we might go out on a date night when it's all said and done to celebrate.
In te reo.
Maybe the date night is the plan.
Yeah.
And if it's teenagers, I don't know what kids like to do, but it's
video
teenagers.
games.
It's probably going to be online.
You can, like our boy loves shooting hoops.
Yeah.
Take him down to the school and.
Yeah. Or the language plan is the language of basketball, and the reward at the end is the new basketball hoop. You know, and that's what we all get out of it.
So is it correct to say that language plans, I don't know if you'd set time frames for goals, but it seems flexible. Like it just happens when it happens, when you reach that goal, that particular goal, whatever it is in your whānau. Because there could be times where someone's in it and then backs off, then comes in again. So to be kind to yourself and each other in the time it might take to reach a goal.
So true. I mean, Like in whare with 5 people, all of whom speak Māori but they don't speak Māori at home, they can generally set shorter term plans because they've already got the corpus. So they knock one of those steps out of the way. So they can generally have shorter, you know. For them it's more about resetting up your relationships in a different language. But for people who have to learn it as well, learn the vocab and master all that, it's going to take longer. If we decided that our language plan was going to be focused around the bathroom, so the language of brushing teeth and, you know, having showers and all that kind of stuff, which isn't, like, that's not a silly idea because we all use it every day.
Yeah.
You know? And so we're going to learn how to wash ourselves, we're going to learn all the body parts, you know, we've got kids, so that makes sense, you know, we've got all of that stuff. Have you brushed your teeth? If we were going to do that, 6 months, a year? To really learn all that?
I reckon we could do it in 6 months.
Might be 6 months.
Yeah.
Some people would be a year. But then after that 6 months or a year, you'd have all of that language and you'd know stuff about, you know, drying off your body with a towel. And then you know stuff about washing, which means you could do other kinds of washing, like washing the car.
Yeah.
Washing dishes, like all of that vocab eases out into your next plan. So if the next plan becomes the language of the kitchen, you've spent 6 months using it in one solid context.
There's a few things you could pull out.
Now you can pull it all out and you can actually do another one. So that 6 months is so well spent because it lasts forever. You know what I mean? Whereas most people go, I want everything now, immediately. I will be a monolingual speaker. Thousands of words in me now. Get in my belly, and then they don't achieve anything in 6 months or a year. You know what I mean?
Falls down.
It's such a good thing to set a timeline, but to know that that timeline has an infinite, you know, end date kind of thing, because all of that language is going to go everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 different whānau could have the same plan and have different outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's totally dependent on how you've set up how your whānau is set up and what they need.
Yeah.
And any amount of time is okay as long as it's realistic, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, not the fluent in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, you set a great plan to have karakia in 2 languages. That didn't take you long to, like, solidify, you know, for your bedtime routine.
Because me and...
that was your idea, and it was me.
Boy and I do karakia before bed, and he made up his own one, and he does it every night since he was, like, little. And when we started talking about our own language plan, I was like, cool, I'm going to show him some Māori karakia. And he learned it off by heart in a week. And now he has added it to our nightly karakia. So it's getting longer and longer. But I just love that he just does it. And his pronunciation is so good. Like, I'm real proud of him.
I mean, I think that was you thinking about the status thing, because it's important for you two, you know, having that time for both of you. So that status, because you already do it, it's something that makes you both feel good. And then also he loves trying to push out his bedtime.
Yeah, so
the longer the karakia.
Probably be by this time next year, there'll be like 6 other karakia.
Yeah.
So we talked about who should be involved, and then we talked about time frames and things. If you've set a plan as a whānau, can you later change it as it goes? Is it a flexible plan, or should you just stick to the script?
You should definitely aim to be flexible about it. This epi is called, I think we call it Planning to Fail, and it really is with language planning that so many things happen in the home that you should really expect it to fall down. And that's not to be a down buzz, it's to make sure that when you're enacting your plan, there might have been things that come from left field. There might have been things that you didn't think about in advance, or things that get challenging as whānau members change and grow within the plan. And it's a good idea to be flexible so that you're monitoring that. Like a couple of examples might be that you wanted to have a Māori speaking dinner in 6 months, with everybody speaking Māori, and you get a new flatmate 4 months in. Oh, hang on, didn't account for this. Or you find out that, Nanny rings at 6 o'clock every night while you're having dinner, and Nanny might not be involved in your plan for that specific thing. And so you got to speak English. That's why we plan to fail. It's because we plan to see those little things that are happening and change them. So that's why the being flexible is great. It allows you to respond to all of those things, to tease out your timeline and not feel like you've actually failed. You're like, hang on, I prepped for this. I knew this could happen. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew something would. I'm not going to let myself be shut down, or my overall dream be shut down. I'm going to ask myself, how te mate? What's the problem with this? It's finding ways of making your plan work within the confines of what your family really truly are like.
Why is failure important?
It really is that knowledge of being able to critically analyse your space. So that was critical awareness that we talked about before. Really being able to analyse what else is going on in your house, including your languages, and making good choices around them. And seeing that as the goal. The goal is to pick up on all those things, is to find them all, It's not a failure every time you stumble across one. It's a reality, and you go, okay, sweet. This is something that I'm going to have to learn to work around, because it's not going to stop happening, because it's your home life. Yeah.
How long have you been doing language planning for?
Do you know it wasn't a thing until 2017-ish? People have been doing it forever. In different capacities, but they didn't really call it a language planner in New Zealand. There are language planners overseas. And I used to look at that and go, that's my dream job. Like, teaching the language is one thing, but my real passion is helping people change their language choices and setting the right cogs in motion for that. That's where I get my most, I love doing that stuff. And when the Māori Language Act changed in 2016, that gave rise to lots of different ways of thinking about language revival here, and one of them was language planners.
I think what's really cool about you telling your language planner journey is that not only have you been helping whānau all around the country, but it's part of your job now, and you created that, and so you're teaching whānau at home, but then in our job that we work at together, you go into a workspace and you help people have language plans for themselves and their teams and things, and I think that's really cool. So that's like really your life
cool.
now.
Oh, it's a really cool job. I think for me the passion is how do you give people, how do you set the right conditions within a whānau or an organisation or whatever to give rise to that love and passion that I have for te reo, and that's quite different from making people speak Māori, or that's what people think the job is, but it's not. It's setting the cogs for the passion.
In your language planning experience, Dr. Vincent, what have been the things that have worked the most for whānau that you've worked with?
Mean communication and really caring communication skills. Designating the labour out. Like, it's quite common that you'll get one person doing everything. They'll be the person who runs in the door and goes, we're going to be Māori speaking. They'll be the one who does the finding the language, whether that's trawling through a dictionary or going to a class to learn so they can bring it home. There'll be the ones who teach the rest of the family, the ones who prepare the resources, cut everything out, make it look all nice. They'll be the ones who for big whānau, they'll be the ones who put the pānui out on Facebook, get everyone together, make sure everyone's coming, be like, oh, Ari, I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, are you coming? So they're the ones checking in on everybody. And then they're the ones that are organising, the events, if it's a dinner, or if it's a whānau beach day, they're organising everything, organising the kai. All of that is too much for one person to handle. There's too much labour there heaped on one person, and the most successful plans delegate it out to other people.
So if there's a whānau at home listening thinking this sounds pretty cool, or maybe picked up some things that they want to try but want to know more, where would they go?
So I do run Mind Your Tongue. You can find me on Instagram. I run a course in language planning where I teach you how to do all this stuff, and you can take it. It's really, really short. There's lots more involved in the language planning. Like I take you through a step-by-step guide. So you can take that short course of mine if you want. Otherwise, there's free resources that Te Matawai, who sponsored this podcast, by the way, so kia ora Te Matawai. There are free resources on the Te Matawai website, and we will link those for you so that you can have a little look at them if you like.
Cool beans.
Plan to fail?
Plan to fail.
Fail to plan?
Fail to
Plan
fail.
to fail.
Plan to plan.
Yeah.
And then succeed. Win.
We need that,
Goal
those
reached.
workplace posters that used to come up in the office all the
motivational
time?
ones?
Yeah, we need one of those.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tū Kapu Te Kōrero. Let us know what you think. Find us on socials, like our stuff, share it with your lovers and friends, and check out the links we post to the topics we might talk about on the show. We love hearing feedback so long as it's based on a platform of high and reciprocal mana. Approach us as your friends and not as experts. We have to keep singing the praises of our funders and mātanga, the experts who put all this together. Te Matawai, tēnā koe tuara mai a māua, ā-pūtea nei. To the team at Ata, Ari, Sunny, Kiri, koutou katoa, we cannot thank you enough. You are all amazing. In our next episode, we are going to dive deeper into the language planning reality. We're going to get really deep into communication with your whānau, how to talk to them, and some common things to avoid. Hoki mai next week whānau mā. See you next week on Tū Kapu Te Kōrero.